so nice to see you through the screen until there are better circumstances. But yeah, it's really nice to meet you.
Likewise. To start with, can you tell us something about your agency that's called Asiancy?
Yeah, so Asiancy it's kind of a play on words, but it's an affinity group within our agency of Wieden+Kennedy. And so by affinity group, I mean within Wieden+Kennedy, we have a group of people who are Asian, and so it's just a way for us to come together and to have a community within the agency.
Okay, about the campaign, the film that we are talking about, could you tell us how this idea was born?
Yeah, I think it was born out of what felt like a need. At the time when COVID was just starting, we were seeing, being in the space that we're in, we were seeing a lot of brands start to shift their conversations and start to direct their resources towards tackling issues that they were seeing in the community. And so we were seeing a lot of good come from that. But I think something that was really unsettling was that we didn't see anyone talking about what was happening in the Asian community. And I think that led to this moment of realization for us where we realized that maybe there weren't a lot of people who are Asian or who come from our background that had that were in a position or had a platform to say something about it. And so just recognizing that and the privileges that we had, we wanted to try to say something with what we were learning and what we were hearing from our community. So it was born from hearing those stories, reflecting on our own, and trying to give voice to that.
I can't stop thinking that you may be the voiceover of the film, are you?
Yeah, yes. So it was a pretty small team, and we all wore as many hats, I think, as we could. But yes, so you are right, Wim. I am the voice of it.
It's amazing. I think the next question is more than obvious. It's probably also based on your personal things that happened to you. The story is also your story.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. For me, I think it is my story, but it more so is a collection of our stories from the community. I think for me, something that's always been interesting in the way that my parents and my family have told me stories is every time they'll tell me a story, they'll say that this may sound unique, but it's not any different than anything else that people like us have experienced. The only difference is we're telling it. And so I think that is true of this project too, in that there is a lot of myself invested in it, but it more so was made to be an effort to give voice to the stories that from our whole community collectively, that of people who weren't able to talk about it or didn't have the space to say it in the way that we tried to with this film. So long story long, it's very much pieces of the collective.
Yes, I understand.
Yeah.
How much time did it take to write it? Did it come out in one time, or was it written in several parts?
Yeah, that's a great question. This was different than anything else I've written in that it was probably the easiest thing to write. It wasn't very premeditated and there wasn't much strategy behind it. I think it felt like something that just kind of spilled out of me in a few, I would say it all was like in the span of a few hours, and then to get kind of just the body of it and the main story of it, and then the next 2 days was just kind of like laying in bed or eating breakfast or having these moments where certain words would click and swap themselves around, but it was very much body of it within a few hours and the whole of within a few days. But it was surprisingly very easy. And I think it's just telling of when something really needs to be said, it just has to come out of you.
I
Yeah.
understand. What is compelling, apart from the message and the words, is also the way that you say them, and especially the way that sometimes you cut between words, but also cut in the middle of words. Did this go by coincidence, or is there something behind it?
Yeah. Thank you. And I wish I could tell you that I was smart enough to strategize and to plan how it should sound and what the impact of it should be. I think it was very much just in the way it was written, was the way it was spoken, just happened really naturally in terms of what where I felt I needed a breath, where I felt words were both the beginning, both an end and a beginning of a later sentiment. Um, it just it I to be honest, I spend a lot of time talking to myself when I'm processing thoughts. So it was just kind of that, just talking out loud and feeling out what needed to be said when in a way that felt right to me to punctuate certain moments. And then after the fact, looking back on it, it was like, wow, this is a pleasant coincidence that it sounds good. But yeah, so yep, I wish I could tell you I was smarter about it, but it just happened in a way that it felt it needed to be said that way.
Absolutely. What has the effect of the film been so far? Came out
Um,
in May, I think.
yeah, it's I mean it's been an interesting time, and I feel anyone that is talking about human rights or about just representation should recognize what's going on right now with Black Lives Matters, and and that's something that's also important to me. And so when this film came out, I think it came out on a Friday, and the following Monday was when we learned about George Floyd, and we learned about everything else that came after that really quickly. So I think since that's happened, we it's just been a lot of time feeling really raw from everything and processing it as we go, and shifting perspective, or just shifting the focus and giving space to conversations that needed to happen at certain times. Um, and so I think with the impact of this, it's been very much in the mix of things that were happening. Um, we have heard a lot from. I think my favorite, and if, I don't know if favorite is the right word for it, but something that I really appreciate coming out of this, an effect of it, is just the community rallying together. I've always felt kind of isolated in advertising, especially before agency, because there aren't very many of us. And after this came out, there were so many people from different agencies, from different places outside of advertising that reached out to us, that acknowledged, just to say thank you for saying this for us, for our behalf. And also, what can I do to help? And these are the resources I have. This is what I'm good at. What can we do to further this conversation, to further the conversation overall about human rights and about representation and diversity and exposure? So just seeing the community come together, that was, and so many of those conversations are still happening today and now, and this conversation is a product of it too. So um, I think just seeing people rally together for something that we all believe in at this time felt really important. And it feels like a starting place for more conversations and more initiatives that need to happen.
That's cool. It's really great that you feel the effect. And as you say, I wouldn't have called you if the film wasn't there. I mean, it has an effect on all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the thing that I saw on LinkedIn is that you started off as a copywriter only 4 years ago. Before that, you had some training jobs and or educational jobs, and then a commercial function like account manager.
Mm-hmm.
And in your career to make this switch?
Yeah, it's it's always really entertaining for me to look back and to connect the dots. It's easy to connect it now looking back, but um, I so your to your question of what led to the transition, I so many parts of me I feel like I haven't transitioned yet, and by that I mean I started in spaces around mental health and wellness, and that's always been something that I felt a lot for, and then in that space was just a shared space with community service and social justice and education. They were all linked. And I love that space. I still do, and I miss it so much. And I feel so grateful for friends and connections that I still have in there. Um, the reason that I moved out of that space was because it felt like there was so much that needed to be said and that I wanted to see or hear, but there weren't the resources to do what needed to be done. And so advertising, I recognized, was a space that had these resources and didn't necessarily have the voice to apply those resources. Um, so for me, the transition was just keeping the things that I felt were still important, that I still love, but using the tool of advertising to communicate that. Um, and so, yeah, so still now it's hard for me to identify as a copywriter. Um, I, yeah, I just see myself as someone that just is here and is trying to say things.
Yeah. I suppose you would have planned to go to Cannes this week, normally.
Oh, it's a great question. I mean, to be honest, it was never a consideration that was attached to this project. Um, for a lot of reasons, I think because it is it is handling very sensitive content, and and so we have to be considerate about what our role is, what it means for us to be the one saying it. Um, yeah, so it just took a lot of sensitivity and considerations in what we can do and what the right ways to show things are. I think for us, this piece felt like something that we wanted to separate from advertising as much as possible. I think for us, it felt like we are people who have this have these resources, have this platform, but it's not an advertising message. It's a thought piece. And the farther that we can separate it from an advertising agenda, the more it's able to be heard as this this thought piece for like an intimate piece between people.
Thank you, Tanya.
Yeah.
We have time for one more, just about your vision on the future. What do you want to do? How do you want to make the difference in the advertising world or outside of it?
Hmm.
You already are on the good track, I think.
I don't know. I'm trying. I think in terms of the difference that I want to make, I think sometimes it's hard just existing in the space as and not seeing very many people that sound or look like you. So I think for me and just other people of color and people from diverse backgrounds, I think just to exist sometimes is enough. I think beyond that, what I'd like to do once I get a handle on just existing is to change the narrative a bit so that in advertising we make things that listen to people more than that try to tell people how to feel, what to do, what to buy. I think as conversations are shifting and the world's evolving, it's so I think brands are heard more curiously when they take a step back and just listen and and project what they're hearing.
That's a good way to stop, to end this interview. Thanks so much for your time, Titania. Thanks for your wise words. And we wish you a lot of luck and hope to see you next year, maybe in Cannes, who knows.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Thank you so much, Wim. And yes, I hope we all get to see each other soon at some point.